This video was a Patreon request from a Transformers fan. Welcome back to the many toys of, and usually I would be talking about a Transformers character, but today I want to focus on the other major transforming robot series from the 80s, the one that beat Transformers to the store shelves, and I would argue, had better toys given the price points and the overall quality of figures and transformations. Today we're talking about the mini toys of the GoBots. Now stop me if you've heard this story before, but back in the 80s, a major American toy company teamed up with a Japanese toy manufacturer in order to import a number of highly popular transforming robot figures. Now introduced to the North American and European audiences, these toys would soon be adapted into a wildly popular cartoon show, and that cartoon show only bolstered the universe and the toy sales. Within the new fiction, it turned out that these were two warring races, and even worse, the leaders used to be best friends, the High Guardians of a far-off robot planet that fought off alien oppressors, only for one of the Guardians to lose their way. Becoming ambitious and prideful, they tried to betray their best friend in order to gain power for themselves, and now lead the evil faction in a civil war that has drained the planet's resources. Now both factions are here on Earth, trying to rearm themselves or find a new home. And it's only by working alongside humans that the heroic faction is finally starting to turn the tide against the evil empire. That's the story of the GoBots. Psykill and Leader 1, the former best friends, with Psykill gaining a thirst for power that would see the relationship fall apart, and Gobotron be driven into war. The thing is, that's the Optimus Prime Megatron backstory, but that backstory didn't exist in G1. It wasn't until we get to the 2007 movies that we start having any type of idea that Optimus and Megatron were buddies back in the day. And it's all from Leader 1 and Psykill. Unfortunately, the GoBots is something of a joke in Transformers communities. For many years, people would turn their nose up and act as though they were an inferior show and an inferior toy line. But I'm here today to say, most of the most beloved parts of Transformers are heavily inspired, if not outright stolen, from the GoBots. And moreover, I think the GoBots toy line, as a whole, are far more impressive and were far more affordable than their G1 Transformer counterparts. There was less parts forming, more creativity, and more diverse alternate modes. And as a result, this video is dedicated to celebrating the original GoBots line. But of course, before we begin, a big thank you to Blaster TF, Siren2, J Woods 2023, and especially big thank you to a Transformers fan. A Transformers fan actually made a Patreon request for me to cover this original toy line, and that's why we're here today. Starting with GoBots ID number 01, it's the leader of the Renegades, Psykill. Psykill is one of the single greatest characters in GoBots. He has an amazing voice, and the delivery is always excellent. Psykill considers himself a revolutionary, someone who is leading the Renegades from their huddled masses and into a greater tomorrow. But in truth, he's selfish. Very similar to animated Megatron, he might talk about being a freedom fighter, but truth be told, he's just a fascist. He puts on the musings of a thinker when he is a thought destroyer. Everything Psykill does is for the sake of his own power, and as a result, he is one of the single most dangerous GoBots in existence.
If I can't rule Gobotron as a Guardian, I'll rule as a Renegade. Now goodbye, old friend. Sorry about this.
His original figure came out in 1983, and I want to point this out. This is the first transforming motorcycle. It beats Wreck-Gar, and even though it's definitely dated by today's standards, I still like this design a ton. He is a Gobotronian motorcycle, which means that he's intentionally alien looking. And he is a parts former, Both his engine block and his wheels had to be removed and put other places in robot mode, and as a result, it's very hard to find a complete Psykill nowadays. But if you are able to get a complete Psykill, he is stunning. I love this design, I love the colors, I love the placement of the wheels. Obviously, someone like Animated Prowl was able to put the wheels into the legs, but there is something kind of cool about the wheels becoming shoulder pauldrons. He has issues, but for what you were getting at the time, $3 would give you this Psykill, and I can't undersell that. For the same price as the mini-bots, you could get almost any Gobot, and Psykill has more articulation and, dare I say, more interesting playability than any mini-bot. Going into 1984, you would have a re-release of the original Psykill, a green, black, and gray redeco of Psykill that in recent years has been identified as the Shattered Glass coloration for the character. The original figure released alongside Twin Spin and Stinger in the Renegade gift pack number 1. One of the strangest Psykills to ever come out was produced by Monogram. The convertible model kit isn't even a Gobot, it's actually Lance's Cyclone from Robotech, but it kinda looks like Psykill in the coloration. This was the Wild West of transforming robots. If it was from Japan and could transform, it would be coming to the United States as either a Transformer or a Gobot some way, somehow. On the international stage, Psykill was released as Moto in Europe. Very quickly the same year, Moto was reissued on a different box, now identifying himself as Psykill. To round out this international tour, you would have had Cycleman, who was very quickly changed into being Psykill. Both of these were released in Australian markets this year. 1985 was the year that Transformers and Gobots would go all out in the war with each other, and Psykill was given a ton of toys in the United States and all across the world. Starting with something familiar, there was yet another reissue of the original Psykill. The green and black Psykill was also reissued. The toy store made an action puppet of Psykill, which is really more like a little statue of the guy. Monogram came back to make the collectible eraser Psykill, which is an absurdly good-looking eraser? Seriously, that just looks like the toy. Why is that an eraser? A version of Psykill in motorcycle form was included in the Turnover Racer kit. A miscolored Psykill would be a take-apart Gobot coming out alongside Pathfinder. The black and green Psykill was turned into the controller for the Gobot's Battle Train set. Perhaps the single most important version of Psykill is the Super Gobot Psykill. Standing close to 6 inches tall, this Psykill is very similar to the original toy, just missing the chrome. But he is now able to stand eye to eye and shoulder to shoulder with most Transformers. The idea here was to essentially make bigger toys, in the hopes that kids might be willing to buy more Gobots if they weren't seen as being the tiny versions of Transformers. Even though that wasn't quite successful, this Psykill has very impressive sculpting and painting, and if you do need a larger version of your main bad guy, this is a very solid redo. What's even better is that the European release actually gave Psykill his chrome back, so this is the best of both worlds, the glamour of the small Psykill with the size of the Super Gobot. The chromed out Psykill would also be released in Australian markets. 1986 was the end of the road for the Gobots, but there was still one Psykill left. You could have gotten a transforming version of him released only in France. For all of Psykill's brilliance, he certainly doesn't hold his army to a very high standard. He is more than happy to employ idiots as long as they know how to follow orders. Just like Tank. Tank is not all that smart. After all, he named himself after what he turns into and didn't even bother to think of a pun. But Tank is reliable, strong, and knows when to shut his mouth, which makes him one of Psykill's favorite soldiers.
Tank reporting from Gobotron.
Gobot ID number 02 came out in 1983, and Tank is, well, a tank. He's a blockhead that turns into a block. That's literally just a square on treads. But Tank does have a little bit of personality to him. I like his face sculpt. He looks exactly how you imagine someone like Tank to be. He has wide features, doesn't look all that bright, but also does have a sense of toughness to him. And even though I think the colors are a little bit boring on him, overall there's enough yellow and chrome to break up the blue. I just wish that there was something maybe in his shoulders or arms to really help that out. Psykill was a great start. Tank is a kind of iffy number 2, but thankfully, there were many other Gobots this year that someone like Tank was happy to fill in the numbers without having to take up too much time in the spotlight. Going into 1984, Tank would be reissued. He would also appear in the Renegade Gift Pack number 2 alongside Jeeper Creeper and Crasher. Just like Psykill, Tank was able to come out in European markets both on the black card back and the blue and purple card back. And finally, Tank was released in Australian markets, both in the Machine Men card back and the GoBots card back. Don't let Tank fool you. There are some absolute geniuses within the Renegade ranks. Just look at Gobot ID 03, Phyor. Phyor is Psykill's second in command, and he's often left in control of Gobotron or the Rogue Star. Very similar to Shockwave, Phyor has been trusted with his master with overseeing the larger operations of the army. While Psykill is on Earth fighting Leader 1, it is Phyor who is controlling the rest of the Renegades throughout the entire universe. Phyor has nothing but loyalty to Psykill, so much so that he used to be a Guardian as well, but when Psykill decided to turn traitor, Phyor followed him without question. Psykill seems to treat Phyor as a friend, so much so that they call each other nicknames.
Phyor standing by, Psykill, and awaiting your orders.
I read you, Phyor, old friend.
You can tell that these two have been through a lot together, and as a result, they have each other's backs.
Once Zod reaches Earth, Psykill will be unstoppable.
Very much like Psykill and Tank, Phyor turns into a Gobotronian vehicle, specifically a Gobotronian fighter jet. And I like this. Granted, I do hate that you don't see the wings in robot mode, they're just folded into his legs. But even still, I like the robot mode a lot. I like that he has a cone head, I like that he has these colors to him, and his visor helps make him feel a little bit more serious compared to someone like Tank. Alongside that, the jet mode looks pretty cool too. It's a very simple space fighter, but it's solid enough for what it needs to do. And overall, I think Phyor is one of the better Renegades from year 1. Going into 1984, Phyor would have been re-released. In Europe, he came out on the black card back as well as the blue and purple card back. And finally, he came out under both the Machine Men logo and the GoBots logo in Australian markets. Going into 1985, Phyor was once again re-released. Finally, on the more Chotsky side of things, you would have had the monogram eraser of Phyor and a pencil sharpener. And that pencil sharpener literally just looks like the normal toy. For fans of the original cartoon, Tank and Phyor were guest characters at most. But with Gobot ID 04, we're getting back to one of our core characters with Copter. Copter is one of Psykill's oldest and most loyal followers. However, he's also a total idiot. Not quite Tank dumb, but definitely dumber than you might hope. At the same time, Copter is loyal, Copter is powerful, and Copter is able to fly. Granted, they can all fly in robot mode, but his ability to fly in vehicle mode makes him better suited for surveillance or spy missions. As a result, Psykill keeps him around.
So long, sucker.
Copter's original toy is really interesting to me. It has this beautiful blue throughout the entire body, but it's also kind of hard to make out his face. I also really enjoy his arms, but with how chromed out they are, they're very easy to chip. And finally, you have the propeller. Admittedly, when you look at some characters like, say, Blades, they would just keep the propeller on the back. I appreciate that Copter is actually able to relocate his blades in order to make them a functional weapon. It's an overall fun idea, but very much like Psykill, that means that it's easy to lose a very important part of the vehicle mode. I'm pretty sure you know what the gist for 1985 is going to be. Re-release, European release, second European release, Australian release, yet another Australian release. Finally, in 1985, there was one final re-release of that original Copter in North American markets. Look, I know a lot of people on this channel love Thomas the Tank Engine. I know a whole lot of you have that good old-fashioned train autism. So what if I told you that in 1983, there was a Loco? What is Loco's personality? I don't know, he's crazy and he turns to a train. Loco! Locomotive! Locomotive. That's the joke.
So she wants to play rough, does she?
Loco is actually really impressive as a Transformer. He's an incredibly well-proportioned Gobot, and he turns into a very squat but very cute little train. I like him a ton. I do wish that there was a little bit more color to him, but overall, Loco is one of my favorites. Oddly, Loco was not reissued in 1984, at least not in American markets, but he still came out in European markets both on the black cardback and the blue cardback, and then came out in Australian markets both as a Machine Man and a Gobot. With Gobot ID number 06, we get to our very first Guardian, and possibly my favorite Gobot of them all, Spacy. Spacy is an incredibly cute little space shuttle, but don't let her design fool you. She is one of the oldest Gobotronians around, and was a part of the Gobotronian Council that decided to name Leader 1 as leader of the Guardians. Spacy might be older, but she is just as ready in a fight now as she was all those years ago, though admittedly, she is a lot more at home in an administrative field.
What's the problem, Leader 1?
We think the Renegades are preparing a surprise attack.
Renegades?
Spacy's original toy is simple, but it gets the job done. A great looking shuttle that turns into a very cute little robot. I love the big head. I'm sorry, I just think it's really funny. It reminds me of the Martians. That said, due to her being cast entirely in 80's white plastic, Spacy is very prone to yellowing. It is very hard to find a Spacy nowadays that hasn't completely discolored through time. Another important thing to note, that tail fin will snap. Be very careful during transformations. Spacy would have a great 1984. Let's go through the basics real quick. American reissue, European reissue 1, European reissue 2, Australian reissue, Australian reissue 2. That said, Spacy also got a convertible model kit. Put out by Monogram, this one actually is based on a Gobot and not Robotech. And even though it's a bit weird looking, I'm just glad that Spacy got something cool. Spacy as a Super Gobot is one of the single best figures in the entire line. Her transformation feels like something that would come years later in a line like G2 or maybe even Classics. Speaking of Classics, there's a little bit of Classics Astro Train in her, especially when it comes to how the arms and legs work in the transformation. Granted, Super Spacy doesn't look a whole lot like her original form, but I still think it's cool that Spacy has two distinct figures, and both of them are some of the best of the entire Gobots range. If I could only suggest one Super Gobot to you today, it would probably be Spacy, because even though her articulation isn't all that great, her transformation, her design, and her size make her perfectly at home with almost any Transformers collection. Seriously, put Super Spacy alongside your Age of the Primes figures. It will work. I guarantee you it will work. Blasting off into 1985, there would have been the Super Gobot Spacy released in European markets. Super Spacy would have also flown over Australia this year. What's really cool is that there was a walkie-talkie that came out produced by Playtime, and it's literally just Spacy. It's the original robot design too. That's awesome. I'll tell you the biggest surprise though. In 1993, there actually would have been a reissue of Spacy in European markets. It's Super Spacy, released in the 90s, and I stand by this, she still blends in. Great toy, way ahead of its time. Perhaps the single best shuttle to come out of 80's transforming robots. For fans of the GoBots cartoon, ID number 07 is going to be a familiar face because it's Turbo! Turbo is the rough-talking, hot-headed, but always dependable second-in-command to Leader 1. Unlike most of the Guardians, Turbo was not a soldier, he was a construction worker. But when Leader 1 was attacked by the Renegades in one of his earliest missions, Turbo stepped up and saved the soldier. Nowadays, Turbo is Leader 1's most trusted companion, and when there's anything troubling Leader 1, Turbo is one of the first people he'll go to. Even though Turbo can have a hard time chilling out, he is loyal, and moreover, he knows when it's time to calm down. Even though he can be emotional and he can more than easily lose his cool, he always knows when it's best to take things slowly and calmly, especially when his friends are involved.
This reminds me of the technology on Gobotron.
Yeah, Gobotron a couple of 100 years ago.
Interestingly, Turbo is one of the few Guardians to still have a Gobotronian alt mode. His original 1983 toy is very simple, but has a ton of playability to him. He might not be the flashiest guy around, but between his solid proportions, easy transformation, and super fun car mode, he was one of the highlights of the GoBots figure range. He was just an all-around dependable toy, just like he was an all-around dependable soldier to Leader 1. Going into 1984, you know the drill, reissue, 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 but he was also included in the Guardian Gift Pack number 1, alongside Fliptop and Leader 1. Turbo is also the center of an old toy mystery. Monogram made a Turbo Snap Fit model kit, but this is clearly not Turbo. But no one knows what this design is from. There was a belief that it might be from some older mecha anime in Japan, but we've not been able to find anything to connect it to. Maybe, Turbo is the center of a piece of lost media. We just don't know. Going into 1985, there was yet another reissue of the original Turbo toy. There was also a white redeco of Turbo, only released in Australia alongside Stax. Finally, Turbo is one of the few Gobots to get an action puppet, just like Psykill. Turbo's toy career came to a close in 1986, where he was released in French markets in the Gum Tresser line. Gobot ID number 08, BuggyMan, might look like Beachcomber. They're both blue, they both turn into dune buggies, but whereas Beachcomber is a pacifist, BuggyMan is a sadist. He relishes in the pain of others, and loves to destroy nature as he comes across it.
I just love being an uncivil engineer.
BuggyMan's original toy in 1983 is a really impressive dune buggy. I mean, seriously, look at that. I think it puts Beachcomber to shame. And the robot mode's pretty solid too. It's definitely cut from the same cloth as a lot of the GoBots figures, but again, look at that vehicle mode. So detailed, so wonderful. I'm really taken with BuggyMan. I think I need to get him. What's really strange is that BuggyMan doesn't have the same trend as the others when it comes to reissues. In 1984, he was now cast in orange and green, making him distinct from the original. Alongside that, the blue BuggyMan was only ever released on the blue and purple European card back, not the black one. That said, BuggyMan did get both versions of the Australian release, both Machine Men and the GoBots. Finally, there would have been a convertible model kit of BuggyMan, and very much like Turbo, we don't know where this design originally comes from. To bring BuggyMan's very odd toy career to a close, in 1985 he was included in the Australian Stax transport set, giving him a third distinct color scheme, now being a burgundy with white. Gobot ID number 09 is the very unfortunately named Dumper. He's a cute dump truck, he's reliable and friendly, and he always takes his assignments in stride, but his name is also Dumper. And what's even worse is that his twin brother's name is Pumper. My juvenile jokes aside, Dumper is a really nice toy. He has a great transformation and looks awesome in robot mode. If anything, I think he puts Long Haul to shame. Going into 1984, Dumper was not re-released in North American markets. He only received the blue and purple card back in Europe, though received both the Machine Men and GoBots card back in Australia. Gobot ID number 10 is Pumper, brother of Dumper, And yes, that means that they are a pump and dump. That said, they aren't crypto bros. No, they're actually detectives. Bad detectives. Pumper and Dumper try hard, but they don't actually solve all that many cases. Even still, they are friendly, and they do at least try to do the jobs assigned to them, though admittedly, Pumper is a little bit worse for wear than Dumper. I do like his toy though. I think it's really cute how they couldn't figure out what to do with the ladder, so they just turned it into a weapon. And even though he has rather weedy proportions, overall he's still solid enough. He's not a patch on Inferno, but he's also $20 cheaper than Inferno, so I can take it. What's really strange is that Pumper never got an American reissue and never got sent overseas, so there is no European or Australian release of him. That's odd, right? Gobot ID number 11 is Dozer, a tough and sturdy bulldozer, and sometimes the brother of Dumper. Oddly enough, for some markets that didn't get Pumper, Dozer was identified as Dumper's brother, but never in North America. In North America, they're just buddies, I guess?
And as usual, Dozer saves himself.
His original toy is solid enough. Admittedly, I think he's about on par with Bone Crusher. There's some things that Bone Crusher does better, but I do think there's also some things, like the overall robot shape, that Dozer does better. Pretty solid overall. Going into 1984, you would have had Dozer go under the name of Bulldozer in European markets and was only ever given the blue and purple card back, whereas in Australia he got both the Machine Men and GoBots card backs. Hans Cuff is Gobot ID number 12. He is a guardian that is completely preoccupied with security and usually remains on Gobotron, where he protects the Guardian Council. There's not much to him past that. He knows rules and regulations and follows them to a T. Also, his name is Hans.
You almost had me around that last turn. We're on patrol, not in a motorcycle marathon, you know.
His original toy is a little bit weird. The cop car looks fine, but feels a little bit too squared off. And then in robot mode, he oddly looks a little bit like Tank. I think he's one of the weaker of the Year 1 figures if we're being honest, but hey, it's a police robot. You gotta have a police robot in your Transforming series. Alright, you know the drill. 1984, you got a reissue. No black card back, but there was a blue and purple European release, and then he got both versions of the card back in Australia. Back in North America, he was also re-released in the Guardian Gift Pack number 2 alongside Royalty and Dive. Finally, Hans Cuff was re-released in 1985 in the Australian exclusive Stax Transport Collector Pack, where he was given an exclusive redeco. With that, Hans Cuff was the last of the original year of Gobot releases. But of course, they went straight into 1984 with a whole new series. Starting off with ID number 13, Flytrap, a Renegade dump truck. And believe it or not, he is one of Psykill's strongest and smartest warriors. The whole reason he turns into a dump truck is to make people underestimate him. They look at him and assume that he is a smelly loser, or that he's a joke. But that's entirely what he wants you to think. In truth, he is more than capable of outthinking you and outfighting you. The whole dump truck thing is just so he can blend in without anybody noticing. After all, who wants to pay attention to a smelly garbage truck driving by?
You're coming with us. The way we're going, no one will ever find you.
His original toy is a lot of fun, but admittedly, he has a hard time standing up. There's a really cute gimmick where the dump truck's arms are actually able to raise and lower in the back, but as a result, his feet can become very, very loose because they're made up of those very same arms. Perhaps the single most famous Guardian nowadays is Smallfoot, Gobot ID number 14. And funnily enough, she's not that big a deal in the original series. She's definitely a fan favorite, and she has a great personality, the young recruit who's trying to prove that she knows what she's doing. But at the same time, she actually is a lot more capable than characters like Leader 1 give her credit. Even though she might not have the most experience in the world, she does have a good head on her shoulders, and is able to work incredibly well as part of a team. For those reasons, Leader 1 actually believes that Smallfoot has the potential to become a great leader of the Guardians one day.
I am sorry for underestimating you. I want you back on our team.
Thanks, Leader One.
Even though she's not a main character, she left a massive impression on people, which is probably the reason as to why she shows up in so many Transformers things nowadays. Not only was she the main character of the Gobot storyline put out by BotCon, but she's also one of the few Gobots to have multiple Transformer toys made in her likeness. That said, we're not covering any of the Transformers toys today. We're just looking at this original figure released in 1984. And it's great. I like it a lot. Look at this heavy-duty truck. And then when she transforms, she looks like the normal Gobots. I didn't talk about this with Spacy, but a thing I really appreciate is that in Gobots, there are multiple women characters, but they look like everyone else. And they don't turn into tiny, cute little sports cars. They can turn into space shuttles, or in Smallfoot's case, a souped-up pickup truck. It's just normal. Smallfoot feels like any other Gobot, but weirdly enough, because she's treated as being like the rest, that makes Gobots kind of exceptional. They didn't make a big deal about their women characters because they're just like everybody else. You get them, you play with them, they look like the other Gobots, they play like the other Gobots, and Smallfoot very well might be one of the most progressive characters in any transforming robot series. Not only for her character, not only for her design, but also for the fact that an entire generation of people took note of Smallfoot, committed her to memory, and when it was time for Gobots to come into Transformers, she was at the top of everyone's list. Before Leader 1, before Copter, before Turbo or Scooter, Smallfoot was the one that was brought back. Smallfoot was reissued in 1985, and this would have been her final Gobot release. As I said, she does have multiple Transformers figures, but that will be talked about in the eventual mini-toys of Smallfoot. Say hello to Dive, Gobot ID number 15, or as I like to call him, Better Sea Spray. You wanna know what I like about Dive? Sure, his name's kinda goofy, but there's a wonderful story to the fact that he is a guardian that desperately wants to help out, but he was born a submarine. And because he's a submarine, his alternate mode can't really be deployed most places. As it turns out, most of the planets that the Renegades attack don't have any standing bodies of liquid that would necessitate Dive being dispatched. That's why he loves Earth so much. For one of the first times in his entire existence, he is on a planet that is mostly water, and he is uniquely equipped to explore the vast majority of the planet. Dive loves Earth, and in many ways wishes that he could have been born on Earth, because only now does he feel happy and at home.
In fact, I like your ocean so much, I may never go back to Gobotron.
Also, I really like Dive's toy. The submarine is perfect. That is a great looking submarine. And then the robot mode is weirdly proportionate. Even better, he's not super round. You'd assume that he would be like a cylinder in robot mode, but he's actually kind of squared off. The transformation here is just to die for, and gives you one of the single best experiences you'll have in the Gobots line, even if, again, the name is a little bit silly. This same year, Dive would have been released in European markets with an extra sticker denoting him as a member of the US Navy, and then he was re-released in Australia in both the Machine Men and Gobot series. Finally, Dive was released in Guardian Gift Pack number 2 alongside Hans Kuff and Royalty. To bring Dive's toy career to a close, he came out in 1985 with a sticker. I have to say, especially after doing the many toys of Dragstrip, Gobot ID number 16 Slicks looks really familiar. What's even stranger is that in Japan, he was originally all yellow, like Dragstrip, but when he was brought over to the North American market, he was changed into being mostly black with yellow highlights. In any case, he looks fine. Admittedly, with all the black and yellow, it's kind of hard to make out any details about him, and his weirdly golden face is not helping things. Moreover, when Dragstrip is right there, I'm just gonna say it, I think Dragstrip does beat Slicks, but Slicks is still okay, he's fine.
Where'd the little dipstick go?
What's even crazier is that the European release of Slicks kept his original design, meaning that he looks even more like Dragstrip, but take a look at that logo on his chest, he's wearing an elf brand, meaning that he's also beefing with Mirage. The Australian release of Slicks is actually a Frankenstein, because it was only released under the GoBots line, but used the original yellow body, meaning that it's the European toy in the American packaging. So you remember how I mentioned Tank being an idiot? Well, Gobot ID number 17 is even dumber than him. Blockhead is exactly what his name would imply. He is the single dumbest renegade. So much so that even his immense loyalty to Psykill isn't enough to keep him off the chopping block. There's been a few times where Psykill has actively considered getting rid of Blockhead, but keeps him around if for no other reason than he needs all the soldiers he can muster right now, even the ones that can't do anything by themselves.
I never get to have any fun.
For all my talk of Blockhead being an idiot, his toy is genius. There's no kibble. You see that big drum, the mixer, that actually gets stored away into his torso and becomes his head. And what's even better is that it can actually spin in vehicle mode. Unlike Mixmaster, it is a functional drum that doesn't just become the backpack. And he's still a fully articulated, at least by Gobot standards, a fully articulated robot with a brilliant transformation. He might be the single greatest example of what the Gobot's engineering was like. Being able to find these clever tricks to hide what would have on a Transformer been turned into kibble, or something that you had to pull off and put somewhere else. No parts forming, no weapons, just a beautiful idea, so simple and intuitive, to make sure that there was no backpack on this guy. Like I said, dumb character, brilliant toy. Gobot's ID number 18 would probably look very familiar to you. His name is Road Ranger, and yes, he does look a little bit like Beachcomber and a little bit like Optimus Prime, but he is his own man, and I like him. His design is simple, I like his big yellow visor, I love his vehicle mode, and the transformation's pretty fun. That said, part of his transformation involves the trailer being slid into his torso, which means you gotta be very careful, because there's a chance that you might break something.
Ah, that was just one of Scooter's holograms, you jerk.
Road Ranger was released in European markets on the blue and purple card back, and then got both forms of re-release in Australia. In 1985, Road Ranger got a reissue in North America, and then a second reissue in 1986. Now, Royal T might look like a weird Dracula of a Gobot. That said, he is actually a guardian, and a noble one at that, descended from one of Gobotron's oldest and most respected royal families. As a result, Royalty is royalty, and he is a bit of a goof. Admittedly, he's here more based on his name as opposed to his skill, but come on, man, he's trying.
This assignment isn't even fit for a modifier rechecked.
His original toy in 1984 is really fun. Even though his arms are a bit weedy, I do enjoy how his wings go above his shoulders. When you look at the G1 Seekers, their wings are actually connected to their hips. So to have Royalty have the wings go above the shoulders and give him almost an angelic silhouette is really cool. That said, with the colors, he feels a little bit more like a vampire than an angel, which is really strange when you consider that he's supposed to be nobility, but then again, he's based off a very specific British fighter jet. It's just a whole hodgepodge of references with this guy. He's very solid, but you'd probably never assume him to be one of the good guys just by looking at him. This same year, he came out in the European blue and purple card back, both versions of the Australian card back, and was in the Guardians gift pack number 2 alongside Hans Cuff and Dive Dive. That said, the oddest royalty might be the monogram model kit, and very much like Turbo, we don't actually know where this one's supposed to come from, but it seems like it might have been from the Robotron line? It's possible, but there's been nothing to confirm it one way or another. Gobot's ID number 20 is the Renegade known as Spoiler. Spoiler doesn't have much to him other than the fact that he's a hothead who doesn't know how to calm down. As a result, Psykill tends to send him out on long missions, knowing that Spoiler is never going to be tired out, but at the same time, it means that Psykill doesn't have to listen to him in the base. It's a win-win!
Wow, look what we have here!
His original toy is pretty solid, and he turns into the same type of Lamborghini as Sideswipe. Admittedly, I think Sideswipe came out a bit better, but Sideswipe was also a larger figure with more budget. Overall, Spoiler is good enough, and I really like his green visor. I don't know why, it just stands out to me. Spoiler was re-released in 1985. And finally, Spoiler's final figure would come out in 1986, only in European markets. Okay, you know how I said that nowadays, Smallfoot very well might be the face of GoBots, and how she's now presented as being one of, if not the most important Guardian? Take all of that, and multiply it by 100 for Crasher. Crasher is the single GoBot that has the most fan recognition and the most attention from Hasbro nowadays. There's third-party figures, people constantly ask for her specifically to come back, and she is still held up as one of the greatest woman antagonists in any type of transforming robot series for the simple reason that she isn't presented as being dainty or being someone's love interest. She is evil, and god damn it, she loves it. Crasher adores to crush the Guardians underfoot. She takes nothing but the sincerest of pleasures in killing each and everything that comes her way. And Psykill treats her as one of his single most treasured and trusted lieutenants, even though he is, at times, kind of scared of how bloodthirsty she can be. At the very least, Crasher is loyal, at least for now. There's never any telling as to when Crasher might decide that Psykill is only getting in the way of her fun.
Well, this could be fun after all.
Crasher's original toy probably looks very strange for anyone familiar with her design from the show. In the show, she was black, white, and pink, and here she's white and blue. If anything, she looks a little bit more like Jazz. Even still, it's a good toy. The only major issue is the fact that her legs slide out, which means that over time, she's going to have a hard time actually staying out of her big boots. It's very, very, very common to find Crashers that can't properly transform anymore, and instead just kind of have to sit on the back of the car, if for no other reason than the knees can't lock in place. Aside from that, she's a very good GoBot. She shows all the strengths of the line, and the fact that it's Crasher only makes it even better. Later that year, we got the proper Crasher, the black and red Crasher, and even though it's still not a perfect depiction of her cartoon design, it's a lot closer, and is one of the best GoBot figures overall. It was this black and red Crasher that would appear in the Renegade's gift pack number 2 alongside Tank and Jeeper Creeper. Only the white Crasher would be released in European markets on the blue and purple card back, and then the white Crasher would once again show up in the Machine Men Australian line, though both white Crasher and black Crasher would be released in Australia through the proper GoBots card back. In something that I'm convinced inspired Stealth Force for Dark of the Moon, you could have gone the Slot Car Chaser. Made by LJN, this Crasher transforms into a rolling set of guns. No robot mode, just a more weaponized car mode. Jumping back over to Australia, a special silver version of Crasher was put up as a raffle prize. Going into 1985, the black and red version of Crasher was re-released in North America. Finally, Crasher's toy career for the GoBots came to a close in 1986 in the Gum Tresser line. even though there are many Transformers versions of Crasher, just like Smallfoot and Road Ranger, it would be better to save those for potential many Toys of Crasher sometime down the line. Made much more popular after a Robot Chicken sketch, Gobot's ID number 22 is Screwhead, and he is now a massive fan favorite because of admittedly a pretty funny Robot Chicken sketch, and also because he's only the main character of Revenge of Cronus back in Japan. That's right, this whole toy line that was made for that anime, he's supposed to be the main character. I don't know how we lost that in translation, but here we are. In North America, all Screwhead does is, sometimes, work aboard the Rogue Star. He's not even a cool secondary character. He's just one of Phyor's guys. He's a guy to Psycho's guy. A guy of a guy. Come on, he used to be the guy.
Yeah, let's feed him to the Zods.
His original toy is pretty cool. Admittedly, I'm not too big on the drill, just because it doesn't really look like anything, but the robot mode is very pretty. I love all the chrome, and the colors are nice, and I'm sorry, every time I see him now, I'm just thinking about the Robot Chicken sketch. I'm just thinking about, Screwhead, do this, do that. That's all I can think about when I see this guy. That's great, I want him, but it does mean that it's kind of hard to take him seriously now. This same year, Screwhead would have been released alongside Zero and Stinger in the Renegade Gift Pack number 2. Finally, in 1985, Screwhead would be reissued one final time in North America. This might be kind of confusing given that he shares his name with a much more famous Transformer, but Gobot ID number 23 is Blaster. And unlike the Transformers Blaster, his name isn't some weird racist joke. Instead, he just turns into a tank. How simple is that?
If these insectoids are anything like the Tricats of Fetch, we'll need these magnetic energy nets.
That said, even though Blaster's name in Transformers is a little bit iffy when you know the context, at least his toy is really cool. Blaster here is just... Like, the vehicle mode is just a cube on treads. And unlike Tank, this is now the second year of GoBots, where it feels like things should have been getting cooler and bigger and better. Instead, this just feels like a weedier Tank. He doesn't have the same oomph to him. He's a little bit scrawnier. And even though the chrome missiles do help, the massive amounts of yellow that aren't broken up with any other color do kind of hurt him. He feels a little bit like safety colors. More like a Tonka truck, as opposed to a Tonka Gobot, you know? Thankfully, I think someone at Tonka thought the same thing, because that same year he was recolored into green and yellow, and this looks so much better. I love this deco. Admittedly, now it kind of looks like Brawn because you have the yellow torso, but screw it! Blaster's a tank! Why not let him be green? Like a tank! Blaster was re-released in 1985, again in the far superior green deco. However, his final release came out in 1986, was released only in Europe, and went back to the original orange deco. That's right, there's no Australian release of Blaster, and there was only barely a European release. So, you know how Screwhead is more famous nowadays because of the Robot Chicken sketch? Let me play you a GIF for Crane Brain real quick. Yeah, that's right. That GIF that your least funny friend and your uncle keep sharing with you every time you say you like Transformers, that's Crane Brain. It's not Erector, it's Crane Brain. Yeah, with all that hype, Gobot's ID number 24, Crane Brain, he's fine. It is really nice that in vehicle mode, his crane actually is able to extend. He is better than Hook, in my opinion. He's definitely a lot better looking in robot mode than Hook. And overall, I think that he's a ton of fun. My only issue is that at this point, there are so many orange or golden Gobots. Like already, we have Dumper, we have Dozer. Crane Brain definitely fits in if you're wanting to make a construction Guardian team. I just kind of wish that there was a little bit more diversity of color here. It would help Crane Brain stand out just that little bit more if he was maybe a black or a gray or anything that isn't this yellow. Maybe that's the reason why the Constructicons were all green. It helped them stand out from these guys, that's for sure. I'll tell you what's really odd though. It takes until Gobot ID number 25 and the second year of the toy line to get Leader 1, the main character. Leader 1 is the leader of the Guardians. He's technically the leader of Gobotron. However, he has refused to take up complete control of the planet. Even though the Guardian Council voted to make him their leader, he still maintains a democracy of civilian leaders. He is in charge of military operations, but even then he prefers to speak to the Guardian Council first before doing anything drastic. Leader 1 was begged to become a dictator. Every single one of the Guardians handed him a crown and told him that they would follow him anywhere. But instead of taking up that crown, he instead instilled the need for everyone to still find their own way. He was happy to be their guardian, he was happy to be their mentor, but he would never be their king. In that way, he is very similar to Optimus Prime. Optimus Prime is the Matrix Bearer. He should be able to lead all Autobots without question. And yet, he doesn't just bark out orders. He treats the Autobots as his children. In a similar way, Leader 1 sees each and every one of the Guardians as his valued friends and allies. If they have ideas that go against his orders, he's willing to listen to them. And he's felt the pain of losing friends. Not only have many Guardians been killed over the years, but there's also the fact that his best friend, his brother, Psykill, betrayed him in order to take control of the Renegades. Leader 1 will never stop until people are safe and happy. He will gladly lay down his life if it means that those around him get to have a better life as a result. And in those ways, he is very much the equal to Optimus Prime. Even his name, Leader 1, has the same meaning as Optimus Prime. You're basically saying best first. Leader 1 is the best of the Guardians. And yet, he would never put himself first. When the Guardians wanted a king, he simply became an advisor.
Well, it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it.
With all that said, the original Leader 1 is kind of rough. His lower legs are very kibble heavy, and even though the transformation's nice and simple, there's just not much to Leader 1. He's all gray, black, white, with only a little hit of yellow and red. He's kind of boring. Psykill is able to stand out and steal the show, and so many of the other Guardians look so heroic and dashing. Leader 1 almost looks more like a drone unit. That said, you could always get the blue Leader 1. Granted, he never looked like this in the cartoon, but I do like this deco a lot more. The navy blue with the white chest and the yellow visor give him a more heroic look. Plus, it's now invoking the Blue Angels, one of the most famous flying groups the US has to offer. I think that this is a way better look for Leader 1, and I just hate that this isn't how you see him most of the time, because I do think it works. It works a whole lot better than the Grey Jet does. That said, if you want to get the Guardians Gift Pack number 1, you would have to get that Grey Leader 1, alongside Turbo and Fliptop. In Europe, Leader 1 was on both the black card back and the blue and purple card back. Just like Psykill, Leader 1 got a convertible model kit from Monogram, and just like Psykill, this is just a Robotech design. In Australian markets, Leader 1 was in both the Machine Men line and the GoBots line. What's the problem with Leader 1's so far? Well, his iconic design is gray, but the gray toy is kind of boring. The blue toy is interesting, but it's not the iconic design. Enter Super GoBots Leader 1. This is a great Leader 1, but it's far larger, with way more stickers, and the jet mode is so cool! It's an F-15 Eagle, and it just looks more dashing. I know it's just bigger and with stickers, but this is what I need, just a little bit more color. It helps that he has a way more defined head now. It feels like Leader 1 has more character to him. I think that this is the best toy Leader 1 has. It is the best looking Leader 1, it's the largest Leader 1, it is the Leader 1 that could stand eye to eye, nose to nose, toe to toe with Optimus Prime and hold his own. Kinda. He's probably not as good as G1 Optimus Prime, but he's still good. He's better than Starscream. Going into 1985, there was a re-release of both the Grey Leader 1 and the Blue Leader 1 in North America. The Super Gobot Leader 1 was released in Europe and Australia. Monogram put out both an eraser of Leader 1 and a pencil sharpener. There was an action puppet of Leader 1, very similar to Turbo and Psykill. There was also a slot car Leader 1 that would go up against the LJN Crasher. I think this is just really funny. There was a gumball machine of Leader 1. Like, it's just a gumball machine, but it looks like Leader 1 who's half transformed. I don't know what they were going for here, but I love it. Going into 1986, we would get the final 2 figures of Leader 1's career. But I think that this is really interesting. There was a Nabisco Leader 1 released only in Australia that was polished chrome. This is a fully chromed out Leader 1. That sounds beautiful. But sadly, there's no known pictures of him. There is also the Gum Tresser Leader 1. Admittedly, after finding out about that chromed out Leader 1, this just doesn't feel all that cool anymore. We're also going to enter a new oddity when it comes to the Gobots. So up until this point, we've been going in order of their Gobot ID number. But for whatever reason, starting with Gobot ID number 25, they started doubling up, in that some of the normal Gobots and Super Gobots would share a number. Case in point, Gobot ID number 25 can refer to either Leader 1 or Baron Von Joy. Baron Von Joy is weird. He looks evil because he's one of those Gobots that has the screen as a face, so it doesn't really look like he has a soul or emotions. And also, he's a Baron, which to me is like the most evil of all titles. I don't know why, it just feels like Baron is always the bad guy in medieval stories. And yet, somehow, this German doctor, who is a Baron, and seemingly has no soul, is a good guy. In fact, he's Baron Von Joy. He spreads joy. He's happy. Everybody likes him. Why? Why is this a good guy? You're gonna tell me that children are coming to play with Baron Von Joy? He's going, "Hello, little ones, come and see my experiments." I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. I think he is into some sinister shit. If they ever did Gobot Season 2, we would have found out about his dungeon. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
This will end the battle much sooner.
I will admit, when I was a kid, I used to hate the Gobots that had the windshield as a face. As I've gotten older, I've grown to enjoy them, but it's only now that I've researched all the Gobots that I realized there's like 8 of these assholes running around that all look the same. They just have different colors and different car modes. Baron Von Joy is probably my least favorite one. Baron Von Joy returned to Europe and was able to get 2 releases out of the deal, as well as 2 separate re-releases in Australia. There is also this competition prize Baron Von Joy that's entirely gold, and you're stepping on Bugbite's turf now, man. You all look too similar with the windshield faces. You can't just start stealing each other's colors. That's messed up, Baron Von Joy. What are you doing, Baron Von Joy? Oh, thank God, the next one is Rescue. So the first of the Gobot ID number 26s is the local ambulance Rescue. Take a guess as to what Rescue's personality is. Because you're right, Rescue likes to help people, Rescue's a pacifist, Rescue is in it to rescue. Get it? That's his name, Rescue? Rescue?
He'll be all right. He just needs a few hours and an Energizer pod.
His original toy's okay. It's very standard Gobot at this point, but overall I think it's a solid enough figure. I don't know if I like it more or less than G1 Ratchet, because G1 Ratchet you have the weapons platform and that weird windshield face thing. I think Rescue is just kind of boring, but at the same time, you need a medic on the team, why not get Rescue? Rescue came out the same year in the Guardian Gift Pack number 2 alongside Wrong Way and Heatseeker. A much brighter white was given to the Rescue released in Europe, and Rescue was also able to get both forms of release in Australia. There's also this blue Rescue that came in the Stax Transport only in Australia. I don't know, man. It doesn't even look like Rescue anymore. It doesn't look like anybody. It just looks like a random goon. Going into 1985, Rescue would be re-released on his own, and in the Guardian Gift Pack number 1 alongside Wrong Way and Major Mo. For all the guff I gave Baron Von Nazi, I do like Gobot ID number 26 Zeon. Mostly because Zeon turns into a firebird, which is cool, but also, Zeon is actually one of the original 3 Guardian High Protectors. It was him, alongside Leader 1 and Psykill, that had been protecting the planet from the alien invaders. However, in the battle that caused Psykill to betray them, Zeon was heavily damaged. He is no longer able to transform, and he refuses to get repaired because he feels that it is needed for him to remain humble. He needs to remember the day he failed, so he can always remain accountable to the people he's supposed to protect and lead.
Leader 1, what is going on? My visit to Sparmoon is ruined. Explain yourselves.
His original toy's okay. Again, like Baron Von Joy, I just don't really like these GoBots that have the big windshield faces and the real gangly limbs. At the very least, his vehicle mode kinda saves it for me. It looks really cool. Zeon would go on to have 2 distinct releases in Europe, as well as 2 distinct releases in Australia. We have an infamous GoBot coming up next because GoBot ID number 27 is Scooter. Scooter, being voiced by Frank Welker, is often compared to Scrappy Doo, a character who seemingly exists just for kids and constantly makes trouble for everyone else. Alongside that, the voice that Frank Welker gave him, as well as the modulation put over it, makes him really grating on the ears. But overall, I don't mind Scooter. People make it sound like the entire show is just Scooter messing things up and being obnoxious, but truth be told, even though he is one of the core characters, Scooter usually doesn't have that much spotlight. Usually it's a lot more based on whatever is the guest star Guardian of the Week. Characters like Smallfoot, or Spacy, or Pathfinder. I can stomach Scooter, and there are some times where I even think Scooter is really interesting, like E2 Psykill. But overall, I understand why people dislike him. It's just a shame because I think the dislike of Scooter has slowly but surely become dislike of the GoBots as a whole, and that's just not fair.
What do you want to do? Make him mad? He tore the command center to ribbons. We've got to take off.
Also, I'll say it, his original toy's okay. I think the transformation's very clever, and the Scooter looks halfway decent. You can even get some smaller action figures to ride him. Scooter would be released on the blue and purple card back in Europe, as well as the Machine Men card back and the GoBots card back in Australia. Finally, Scooter would be re-released in North America one final time in 1985. So now we're going to go to GoBots ID number 27 part 2, and you know how I was making a lot of jokes about Baron Von Joy being a Nazi? Dr. Go actually is a Nazi, so much so that Dr. Go's other name is Air Fiend, as in Herrrfiend. At that point, you might as well call him Mon Phyor. I'm just saying. It's very, very close. He is an all-black German sports car that transforms into a German doctor with a monocle that actively wants to weed out the weakness of the Renegade race. He practices GoBot eugenics. I don't even know where we're going with this.
I'm working as fast as I can, Psykill. Genius can't be rushed.
I do think that he's one of the better looking windshield faces, if just because black and chrome is a really solid look and it makes him feel a little bit more intimidating, but especially when you add in all the other stuff. Yeah, this is one of the most evil feeling renegades. Here's the really weird thing. Dr. Go never had any Australian release, but had 4 separate European releases. There was a blue one, a light blue one, a gray one, and then finally the black version that we got in North America. GoBot ID number 28 is Jeeper Creeper, and unlike that movie directed by the pedophile, Jeeper Creeper is actually pretty cool. That said, he's not cool to anyone he considers an enemy, or even his friends. Jeeper Creeper loves to make people panic. He will sneak up on you. He will do anything in his power to instill fear in you. He uses psychological warfare and treats it like a prank. Basically, he's kind of what the Phantom thinks Skywarp is. We've never seen Skywarp actually push anyone downstairs, but we have seen Jeeper Creeper make people have panic attacks.
We renegades are not used to being sat upon.
His original toy is really cool. Granted, it is strange that his spare tire is just over his head like that, But overall, I like that he's one of the very few GoBots to actually have a gun, and his choice of the army jeep is really cool. The deco makes it kinda hard to see any details just because it's all dark olive green, but I kinda like him as the evil twin to Hound. It just feels right. Jeeper Creeper would come out on both European card backs and both Australian card backs, and finally he would show up in the Renegade gift pack number 2 alongside Tank and the black version of Crasher. Gobot ID number 28 Part 2 is a very familiar name for any Transformers fans because it's Bugbite. Yeah, Bugbite might not look like Bumblebee in robot mode, but in vehicle mode, he's the same type of Volkswagen, same color even. And moreover, Bugbite is actually just evil. He is a governor of a far-flung colony of Gobotronians. All the other Gobotronians under his command cannot fly, transform, or use weapons. Because he was able to use his abilities, he turned himself into a god, and forced all of the other GoBots around him to act as his slaves, even killing any of the ones that stood against him. It was only after Scooter destroyed his Scrambler that the other Gobotronians were able to overthrow him. Ever since then, he's been trying to find refuge amongst the Renegades, but even Psykill doesn't want to associate with him. He is a monster amongst monsters. So of course he was allowed to come to the Transformer universe.
No, wait! I'll take care of this one myself! Oh, come on, you ugly hunk of junk!
I do like Bugbite's original toy. He's another one of the windshield faces, but having all the extra pieces of technology and guns pop out of the windshield helps make him look even more monstrous. Plus, the fact that it's a yellow Volkswagen does make it feel kind of funny. You know, just in retrospect, it's kind of cool to see that GoBots took the same alt mode as Bumblebee, one of the mini-bots, and turned it into a giant bad guy. Just like Dr. Go, there were no Australian releases of Bugbite, only 4 releases of him in Europe. Unlike Dr. Go, they were all the same toy. It was just the yellow Bugbite 1, 2, 3, 4. We're getting to another massive fan favorite with Gobot ID number 29, Pathfinder. Pathfinder is a UFO, much like Cosmos, but unlike Cosmos, Pathfinder is a self-assured badass. She is able to go on missions and undertake entire operations by herself. She's fought entire armies of renegades by herself. She is considered the single greatest flyer amongst the Guardians, even better than Leader 1 himself. The only thing that separates her from everyone else is the fact that Pathfinder, ultimately, finds that she works best alone. If she were more of a team player, she might have a chance of being an even greater leader than Leader 1. If you need proof in the pudding, just look at the few times Pathfinder has been entrusted with leading other Guardians. Be it by leading them against Renegades or against Decepticons, she's always managed to bring entire teams of incredibly different personalities together under one common goal. If she is forced to be a leader, she will become one of the greatest around. In that way, she kind of reminds me of Heatwave from the Rescue Bots.
Now it's your turn!
Also, I love the original toy. Just like Cosmos, she's just a flying saucer, but you can see that they actually tried to make her more proportionate. Again, she looks like the normal GoBots, whereas Cosmos looks like, well, Cosmos. I'm not taking anything away from Cosmos, I love the little guy, but I think it'd be really cool to see Pathfinder and Cosmos in a story together. Yeah, they have similar alt modes, but their personalities, their robot modes, and how they're treated by their respective armies are so incredibly different. Pathfinder was given the blue and purple card back in Europe, and only the GoBots card back in Australia. She also, of course, got several Transformers figures, including a few repaints of Cosmos, but we will talk about that in a mini toys of Pathfinder down the road. Okay, so you know how I think that the GoBots that have windshield faces are kinda dumb? Well, I am a massive hypocrite, because Gobot ID number 29 Part 2 is a tank that has the tank turret as a head, and I think that shit's awesome.
Well, what's this?
Destroyer is a simple toy, but he is amazing. this is one of the best looking transforming tanks I've ever seen. It literally just looks like a model tank. And then when he transforms, sure, he has some lanky legs, but he has a tank turret for a head. And what's even cooler is that he can kind of half transform back to just make himself a tank that's sat up. I don't know, I think this is cool and funny, and I really want this guy. Kinda like Dr. Go and Bug Bite, Destroyer never got any Australian releases, but he did get 3 European releases, though they were all more or less the same. Gobot ID number 30 is Night Ranger, and I'll be the first to tell you he is one of the freakiest looking of all Gobots. Like, he just looks like a bunch of takeout boxes stacked on top of each other. But I swear, he does have a soul. He is a person. He just looks like trash, but he does count. He does count.
There hasn't been any action since we got here, even with them around.
Hurry up, Copter!
Look, motorcycles are hard, and it's worth pointing out, Night Ranger was the first transforming motorcycle where you didn't have to take off the wheels. That's really impressive. That said, the robot mode does look like that, so make of it what you will. Weirdly enough, the European release made him white, and I kinda like this more. For some reason, it helps make the body look more proportionate to my eye. I don't know why exactly, it just does. Only the white Night Ranger was going to appear in Australia under the Machine Men line, though the blue Night Ranger would appear in the GoBots card back again in Australia. Finally, Night Ranger's toy career would come to a close in 1985 when he was reissued in North America. So, Gobots ID number 30, part 2, is a freak.
The Guardians are...
It's Psycho, and I don't know if I love or hate this. He's definitely the most unique out of all the windshield heads, and I like that he's a crazy space future car, and even the robot mode looks really interesting. But like, is this cool? Or is this dog shit? I don't know, actually. I'm going to say that he is intriguing and unique. Because I, honest to God, don't know if I can form an objective opinion on him. It's like looking at modern art. Is it speaking to me? Or am I just a pretentious jackass? There was also a European release, so maybe I need to talk to some of my friends across the pond. Maybe we can come to an international consensus as to if Psycho is cool or not. Gobots ID number 31 is another one of the all-stars of the Gobots line, Spoons. Spoons is a hard-working renegade, blue-collar through and through, and his toy is amazing. So, he is a forklift with working forks. The forks actually go up and down. And you might hear me say that and say, Ron Bonda John, that's not all that impressive. To which I counter, oh yeah? Why can't Revenge the Fallen forklift do that? This was something that no Transformers forklift has done since then. Spoons made it work and was still a fully functional robot on top of that. And also, he looks pretty cool. Granted, he's orange, again, so he's gonna hang out with Crane Brain and Dumper and Dozer, but it's Spoons! This same year, he came in the Renegade Gift Pack number 1 alongside Stallion and Tux. That is a kick-ass 3-pack, wow! Going into 1986, he would have been re-released in US markets as well as European markets. Gobots ID number 32 is Waterwalk. And Waterwalk was actually the first Gobot I bought with my own money as a collector, because he turns into a seaplane.
Don't worry, Psykim. The starfish won't go hungry.
Look, the original toy has a lot of kibble, but that doesn't matter because he's a seaplane. There's no other transforming seaplane. It's one of the coolest alt modes out there, and I like his design. Granted, he has a little bit of the slingshot aviators going on, but I'm okay with Waterwalk and having those aviators because Waterwalk is cool! In all honesty, I like European Waterwalk even more with the white and dark blue. That's a great color scheme. And of course, you could have gotten both color schemes in Australia. Gobot ID number 33 is Fliptop, a guardian with a tense rivalry with Copter, which is funny because he kind of feels like an improvement on Copter.
Renegade up decidedly to one. I'm going in pursuit.
Like, just look at the original toy. Granted, the propellers can't come off anymore, but he's a lot more proportionate than Copter, and I like his colors more. Overall, I think this is the way better helicopter. Fliptop would have had 2 European releases, as well as an inclusion in the Guardian Gift Pack #1 alongside Turbo and Leader 1. The somewhat geriatric Good Knight is Gobot ID number 34. He is well-meaning, but also a bit foppish. He comes from the higher class of Gobotron, and doesn't have much common sense.
Sounds suspiciously like Renegades and the Rogue Star.
That said, his original toy, work of art. Look at this thing! He's turning into a Rolls Royce! He'd get 1 European release and then both forms of Australian release, and then was re-released in 1985 in North America. Street Heat, ID number 36, is actually a traitor guardian. He technically works for Psykill, though not of his own volition.
Right, but you're a renegade and we're Guardian.
Also, his toy is a bit dumpy. It is. It's like Turbo if Turbo stopped working out for a bit. That said, I really like the European release. It's blue with flames. I don't know why, that's just cool. It's basically Trax. He's basically Trax. Gobot ID number 37 is Wrong Way. Wrong Way got his name because he forgets what direction he needs to fly during battle, meaning that there are a few times where he has shot Guardians by accident. His toy is very lanky. I'm not super big on his robot design, but I do enjoy the helicopter. That's decent. This same year, Wrong Way was given a European release, 2 Australian releases, and showed up in the Guardian Gift Pack #2 alongside Rescue and Heatseeker. In 1985, Wrong Way was re-released in North America and was in the Guardian Gift Pack #1 alongside Rescue and Major Mo. Scratch, identified as Gobot ID number 38, is a young and somewhat reckless protector of Gobotron. Scratch's toy is awesome. Look at how much character is in this little guy. He looks like a really good Legends toy from like 2012. Like the same era where we got the Reveal the Shield hoist. It feels like this Scratch would have been in that same lineup. I'm gonna say this toy is ahead of his time. I really think it is. Treacherous, venomous, dangerous. Zero is one of the oldest renegades around, and almost killed Psykill back when he was a high protector of Gobotron, and unknowingly created his greatest rival. Zero had been attempting to take control of the Renegades, but Psykill, with his immense charisma and power, won over every single one of the remaining sects. Zero still has a few followers, but nowhere near enough to lead the army. That's why he now has to undermine Psykill at every turn, but it never works out for him. He's certainly smart, but he's not anywhere near as captivating or as adaptive as Psykill.
Renegades, if you want to defeat the Guardians, if you want power, follow me!
That said, Zero's toy is kinda rough. I love the fighter. It is a Zero fighter, which is somewhat touchy. If you aren't familiar with Japanese history, that is a very specific fighter jet, used for a very specific purpose, but it is cool. The only problem with Zero really is the robot mode. The proportions are wonky and not stable. He has a hard time standing up, especially as his hips and knees degrade over time. Zero got a European release with some extra color, and both versions of him are released in Australia. Finally, Zero was released in the Renegade Gift Pack #2 alongside Screwhead and Stinger. Another one of my personal favorites is the Gobot ID number 41, Tux. Look at this son of a bitch. He is a Rolls Royce with a top hat who adores high society, specifically human high society. He finds our art, our wine, our literature not just interesting, but also marketable. You better believe this guy is a mix of knockout and swindle. He doesn't just appreciate human culture, he wants to make a buck off of it. And that's so cool. What a great idea for a character in GoBots or Transformers. I wish Tux could come back. Like, I want so many of them to show up in shows again, like Crasher and Smallfoot and Pathfinder, but Tux feels so much like he should already be back.
Plan B executed.
Also, his original toy is an incredibly clever transformation, looks amazing, and his little top hat is so cute. The only problem with him is he is very prone to yellowing, but if you can get past that, this is one of the best GoBots out there. This same year, Tux was released in Europe, released in Australia, and came in the Renegade Gift Pack #1 alongside Spoons and Stallion. I'm gonna say it again, amazing 3-pack. Given the ID number of 42, Twin Spin is a Renegade that even the other Renegades hate. And it's not because he's particularly evil, he's just a dick. Nobody likes talking to him. He's just a thoroughly unpleasant individual, to the point that even Psykill doesn't like bringing him on missions, even though he's a pretty powerful warrior in his own right.
We're into the escape shuttle. What about the prisoners? I'll get them. They were gonna be disassembled anyway.
His toy's alright. I think that his torso is just way stretched out. At the same time, it's a really cool transformation, especially with how you almost have to give him a vertical split in order to get the propellers where they need to go. A very cool toy, but one that definitely suffered from the engineering limitations of the day. Twin Spin was never given any European release, but was released in Australian markets. Alongside that, he was in the Renegade Gift Pack #1 alongside Psykill and Stinger. Even amongst a group of alien robots, Vamp manages to look the most alien of them all. With ID number 46, Vamp is one of the first monster GoBots. The monster GoBots were made by the Master Renegade, the original creator of the robot bodies the Renegades use, and he made them intentionally to try to overpower and destroy all of Psykill's loyalists. Vamp is particularly monstrous. She takes great glee in serving the Master Renegade and destroying all who oppose him. Also, that name Vamp isn't just a cute nickname, it's because she drains your life force. She is, quite literally, a vampire alien robot that can turn into a jet. That's too many things. It's cool, but that's too many things.
You can run, Leader One, but you can't hide!
Don't get me wrong, I really like Vamp's toy, but Vamp doesn't really feel like a GoBot. And to be fair, it's not from Machine Robo the way that the rest of them are. It's from a spin-off line called The Devil Insider Kazman. But even still, I think that the story justification of the monster GoBots essentially being the next mutation of the Renegades works. And I like that they did take such a risk with Vamp, making such a freak. And she's a freak, but she's cool. This same year, Vamp was released in Europe and had 2 distinct releases in Australia. She was then re-released in 1985, but her final figure was the Super GoBot Vamp, and this looks like she came straight out of the cartoon. This is one of the best Super GoBots. Admittedly, you have to be into the aesthetics of Vamp and the monster GoBots, and they are very different feeling, but I think that this is so nice. The transformation isn't much, but when the robot mode and the vehicle mode look so pitch perfect, you don't need that crazy a conversion. Joining Vamp on her mission, Scorp was given the ID number 47, and just as his name would imply, he turns into a monstrous scorpion. There's not much to him. It's very clear that Vamp got what little brains they had amongst the monster GoBots, but Scorp is still a terrifying foe to go up against, especially given the fact that he's almost too dumb to know when to stop fighting because he's already killed the guy.
Come on, Screwhead. We're going to teach those Guardians a lesson they'll never forget.
Hear me out. Look at Scorp. That kinda looks like a Beast Machine's toy to me. I'm not saying that to like be cute or funny. He literally looks like a Viacon. He looks like he'd be right at home with like Blast Charge and Scavenger. I really like Scorp. I think whereas Vamp still looked like a GoBot, this looks like a Transformer from the late 1990s, early 2000s. Great looking GoBot. Weirdly, no European release, but there was an Australian release of Scorp, and then they were re-released in 1985. The monster Gobots were proving to be a problem for Psykill. He desperately needed to get a handle on them, so he made his own monster renegade, Pincher, and hoped that he would be able to win Vamp and Scorp over to his side. Instead, Vamp was able to slowly take over Pincher's mind, and now she just has two henchmen. I'll say it, Pincher's original toy is not great. His proportions are very weedy and his colors are kind of gross. I think his head design is really cool, and I actually enjoy his vehicle mode. But overall, he's just nowhere near as impressive to me as Vamp or Scorp. That said, he did get an Australian release, and then was re-released in North America in 1985. We have a surprisingly friendly Renegade with ID number 49. Stallion is actually best friends with his fellow Renegade Stinger. They take care of each other, see each other almost more as brothers than anything else. That's the reason why Psykill often pairs them together. Stallion and Stinger have each other's backs, which makes them a very difficult Renegade duo to fight.
We're awaiting your commands, Phyor.
Speaking of love, I really like Stallion's toy. It's simple, but between the color scheme, the car mode, and the overall solid proportions of the robot mode, I think that this is a really solid Renegade. It's nothing spectacular, but it's also one of those Renegades that just feels so right on a shelf. Later this same year, you could have gotten the Renegade gift pack alongside Spoons and Tux. What can I say? Good 3-pack. Gobot ID number 50 is Sparky. And I love Sparky. She's like Cliff Jumper. She has the worst luck imaginable, and yet she has enough resolve and gumption to get herself out of the bad situations that she finds herself trapped in. She's friendly enough, but more than prone to a little bit of hot-headedness. She's more than happy to tell you when you've pissed her off. Truth be told, a lot of her anger is taken out on the Renegades. And in a war like this, that's not a bad thing.
How do we get out of here?
Satisfied?
I don't know what it is. There's just something about the proportions that bother me here. I think it might be the weedy arms. That said, I do like the head, and the car mode is great. Another problem though is the transformation. She gets incredibly loose in the midsection, which makes it hard for her to actually stay together in robot mode. A good toy if you're able to find one with solid joints. But this toy is also 40 years old now, so good luck with that. Sparky would get a European release, an Australian release, and then come out again in 1985 in North American markets. Gobot ID number 51 is an old veteran who always has a story to share, Vanguard. Vanguard is well respected by all Guardians due to surviving countless battles, and in spite of the horrible things he's seen, he still has a great deal of hope for this world.
Come on, you punks! Show us what you're made of!
His toy's fine. I like the van mode a lot, but the kibble on the shoulders, the weedy arms, and the black and gray color scheme make it kinda hard to make out details of Vanguard. I mean, just look at Gobot ID number 52, Heatseeker. Heatseeker is also a veteran, and yet he's still Chipper, one of the best flyers amongst the Guardians.
Oh no, you don't get away that easy.
And even better, his original toy puts Starscream to shame. Look at the G1 Seekers. You have to take off the wings, take off the landing gear, take off the guns, take off the hands. And even when they're fully transformed with all the parts forming, they don't look all that proportionate. Meanwhile, Heatseeker is a jet fighter that is a third of the size, and you don't need any parts forming. He is all built in, baby, and looks great! Heatseeker would have a unique deco in the European release, and that deco would be used again in the Australian release. Finally, he would be included in the Guardian Gift Pack number 2 alongside Rescue and Wrong Way. We talked about his brother Stallion a little while ago, so let's now talk about Stinger, Gobot ID number 53. Despite being the fastest renegade of them all, Stinger is a total brute. He has no finesse. It's all about speed and power to him, which is why Stallion is such a great partner. Stallion is able to bring Stinger back just a little bit, keep him calm and focused on the mission, whereas Stinger is always able to push Stallion forward and keep him going.
Let's sting him hard!
So you look at the original Stinger toy, he looks pretty solid, proportions are a little bit weird, but the car mode looks great. But look at that car mode. Look at that gold. Look at that swirling gold plastic. You see, Stinger is one of the very few Gobots to suffer from gold plastic syndrome. Even if you're able to get him, do not transform him, because there is a very real chance that he will shatter in your hands. This same year, Stinger would appear in 2 separate multi-packs. He was in the Renegade Gift Pack number 1 alongside Twin Spin and Psykill, and then in the Renegade Gift Pack number 2 alongside Zero and Screwhead. In 1985, Stinger would be reissued to North America. And finally, in 1986, Stinger was released in European markets. If you're looking for an old soldier who's equipped to train the next generation, look no further than Major Mo, Gobot ID number 54. Major Mo is solid enough, but at this point in the Gobots toy line, we had a lot of toys like him. He's a red sports car, his proportions are fairly normal, he has the visor face. I hate to say it, but if you wanted a figure like this, you could have gotten Sparky, or Turbo, or 15 other characters. This same year, he would have been given a European release, an Australian release, an American re-release, and he showed up in the Guardian Gift Pack number 1 alongside Rescue and Wrong Way. Power Glide fans will probably recognize the alternate mode of Bad Boy, aka ID number 55, mostly because Bad Boy and Power Glide have the same exact jet.
Let's turn this place into Junkyard City!
That said, I do prefer the jet on Bad Boy. I think it's a little bit more well-defined until you get to the robot mode. That is a bit of a disaster. This same year, Bad Boy got a European release and then both Australian releases. We're back to the Monster Gobots, and if Scorp reminded me of a Beast Machines toy, Creepy reminds me of a Beast Wars toy. ID number 56, Creepy is noted for being, well, creepy. And the fact that most other Renegades, including his fellow Monster Gobots, are totally disgusted with him. Now why does that sound so familiar? Especially with that alternate mode, the purple color scheme, the claw hands. He's Tarantulas. He is unnervingly similar to Tarantulas, to the point that I am convinced that someone at Kenner had a Creepy toy and was just like, what if we made this guy, but again? Scorp is kind of Beast Machine Z, but this absolutely is Tarantulas. I am not going to be convinced otherwise.
Do not worry, Master! I'm coming to set you free!
To be clear, I'm not complaining. I love Creepy's toy. He actually has a little bit more articulation than most Gobots because his claws are articulated, and his vehicle mode is interesting, to say the least. It doesn't really look like a spider, it's more like a lobster, but again, in robot mode, that is so clearly Tarantulas. In my head, I kind of like to think that this is G1 Tarantulas. Maybe that's the reason why there's the whole Spawn of Unicron line from Megatron. Maybe he just has no idea where Tarantulas came from because Tarantulas is actually a Gobot! That's my fanfiction now. This same year, you could have gotten a green and purple Creepy. This was a mail order special, and I like it. I don't like it as much as the normal one, but this guy feels even more like a Beast Wars backgrounder. He'd hang out with Insecticon, Snapper, and Man Terror, you know? This same year, the original version of Creepy was released in European markets. That said, he never appeared in Australia. Gobot ID number 57, Tailpipe, is actually a little bit of a mystery. You see, he's never appeared in any cartoon or major fiction, but more interestingly, Tailpipe has 2 distinct variants. The original black version that has the orange stickers on the hood, and then this new red version that has a different sticker going along the side with no stickers on the hood. These are essentially 2 different toys that just share a mold. We're back to the Monster Gobots with ID number 58 and Bugsy. Bugsy is interesting. The character is kind of a nothing. He's just another one of the monster Gobots, but what's interesting about Bugsy is that in the cartoon he's green, and then his toy is incredibly red and orange. The thing is, most of the Gobots are very accurate to their toys. That's why their animation models are sometimes kind of wonky. To have someone so different is really unique. And I'll say it, I think the toy design's way better. In the show, he's just a bug. But here, he looks like a demon. He reminds me of the first devil you fight at the beginning of Ghouls and Goblins. Maybe that's just me, but he feels almost, I don't know, creepier like this. In Europe and Australia, he would have been given a more brownish deco, so still not accurate, but I guess closer to the cartoon. Still not great though, I prefer the original. We have Blades as Gobot ID number 59, yet another monster Gobot, and I really don't know what I'm looking at. The dark blue and the black really conceal a lot of the details. No idea what the alternate mode is supposed to be. I'm just not really feeling this guy. It kind of feels like he was the runt of the litter. You know what I mean? Like all the good ideas went to the other monster Gobots, and he was just the crap left over. That said, he did get a European release. Gobot ID number 60 is Claws. And Claws doesn't even feel like a monster Gobot. It feels like they turned more into a UFO than like some weird monster.
Get the others. I'll take their leader. Okay.
I will say, I think the European one's a bit better. The darker blue and the red make him a lot creepier. This is also the version that you'd be able to get in Australian markets. Gobot ID number 61 is yet another monster bot, and it's Hornet. Hornet looks a lot like he should be a part of Instructor. I don't know why, he just reminds me of those freaks. I like him, colors are cool, overall the silhouette's okay. I like that the wings fold over the shoulders. He's a cool looking toy, but he also doesn't really look like a Gobot. He looks like one of those cheapo toys that you find at the Dollar Tree, and you're kind of into it because it is such a weird design, but it's not characterful enough to actually be a proper Transformer.
They're getting through!
The European release is gray, and I just don't like this. I like the blue and purple of the other one. That's way more interesting to me. Australian release is the same as the European one. Oh, thank God. Gobot ID number 62 is finally something that isn't a monster Renegade. We're back to a Guardian, and in fact, it's Treads! Yet another one of the Guardians that got to come over to the Transformers side of things.
It's too hot for me.
I'm just realizing, he's doing the Warpath thing, where the tank treads are becoming the feet. But unlike Warpath, there's just not a lot of visual transformation. He went from being a rectangle on its side to a rectangle that stood up. I'm not really feeling Treads. That said, I can absolutely see why he became a Warpath repaint later on. They had the same shoes. There's a really interesting story with Gobot ID number 63, Bullseye. Bullseye used to be one of Psykill's go-to guys. He was right up there with Phyor. But when Psykill decided to turn his back on the Guardians, Bullseye refused to join. He remained a steadfast ally of Leader 1. And even though some of the Guardians give him the side eye now because of how close he was to Psykill and Phyor, he is still a loyal Guardian through and through.
I'm sorry, Psykill. I won't be part of any conspiracy to oppose Leader 1.
His toy's pretty cool too. Admittedly, I don't like how much his feet jut out to either side, but the robot mode is overall really cool. He kind of reminds me of some of the RID-15 designs, in that it's not really Transformers, but more super robot aesthetic in general, and I like the jet a lot too. It's not like a lot of the Seeker jets. This guy feels a little bit more stealthy. I know he's supposed to be a bomber, but this feels a little bit more like a James Bond spy plane to me. He released in European markets, though was more or less the same. So, ID number 64, Mr. Moto, is really strange to talk about. Mr. Moto really loves Japanese culture to the point that he calls himself Moto-san. And I know that these toys are from Japan, but the show was written by all white guys, and it was Hanna-Barbera, which was a cartoon company that was more than happy to make some race jokes. I don't know how I feel about Mr. Moto. I'm just putting that out there. Also, his toy's not great. I like his trike, like that is a cool motorcycle. Again, one of the first motorcycle transformers, and very much like Night Ranger, he doesn't have to remove any of his wheels, but then his robot mode is that. ID number 65 is assigned to Mach 3. I really enjoy Mach 3's jet mode. It reminds me a little bit of Skydive just because of the color, and then in robot mode, he's really well proportioned. Again, he is a jet fighter that needs no parts forming, and he has a unique body shape. That's another great thing about GoBots. Next to no reuse. All these guys tend to have their own unique molds and transformation schemes. In European markets, Mach 3 lost his United States Air Force stickers and gained RAF markings, and this was the same as the Australian release. Broadside and tidal wave fans take notice, because the first aircraft carrier transforming robot was the Gobot ID number 66 Man-O-War. Man-O-War is an old Guardian officer. He is belligerent and can more than easily lose his cool, but he is also a hardened battlefield commander and one of the single greatest war heroes in the Guardians.
Obertron will never be safe until Psykill and the Renegades have been put out of action.
The toy's cool. Admittedly, in robot mode, he doesn't really look like much, but that's a really nice boat. I'm sorry, it's a nice looking boat. It looks better than Broadside. Doesn't look better than Tidal Wave, but Tidal Wave came out 20 years later and was massive. I do feel kind of bad for the European fans though. I have no idea what this Christmas color scheme is. And unfortunately, this is the Man-O-War that the Australian fans got as well. Ace used to be a Guardian. Gobot ID number 67 was once one of the best of any of them, until he got lost in the domain of Bug Bite. After being lobotomized time and time again, tortured and broken down, there's nothing left of Ace. He's now just a drone, mindlessly following the orders of Bug Bite. He was a hero. He was an individual. But he's lost everything.
Oh, this won't hurt, little one. And even if it does, when it's over, you won't remember.
His toy's kind of iffy. The robot mode looks fine, but that jet mode, look at that! I love this Mustang, it's great! This is one of my favorite jets in GoBots. Ace was able to get a European release, as well as both versions of the Australian release. Whereas Ace is a fallen hero, Bolt, ID number 68, is actually a guy on the rise. He is still a pretty young Guardian all around, and even though he has a tremendous spirit behind him, he's also prone to temper tantrums.
Then how can we end their terrorism?
I have a plan that could stop the Renegades once and for all.
As for the toy, I just don't know, man. Again, awesome jet mode. It's the same jet that the Hunt for the Decepticons Highbrow turns into. But the robot mode, he kind of looks like SpongeBob. Like, if his head was SpongeBob's Krusty Krab employee hat, and the body was SpongeBob's face, it's just SpongeBob. Am I the only one saying that? Bolt would not get an Australian release, but he did come out in European markets. Gobot ID number 69, nice, is a traitor amongst traitors. Dart was a Guardian, and then he betrayed them to join Psykill. And then when Psykill mistreated him, he went back to being a Guardian. Everyone keeps him at arm's length, and why wouldn't you? He's not proven himself to be loyal to anyone or any cause. He goes where things seem nicest. So as soon as the wind blows a different direction, who's to say that he might not join the Renegades again?
Psykill, we have them. Show me. There, on Zeros.
I like his toy. I think the Kawasaki motorcycle mode is really cool. This is great. Dart would also get a European release that actually chromed out his face and gave him a couple more stickers. Skyjack is Gobot ID number 70. And he looks a whole lot like the Cyberjets. What the hell? Look at that. He looks a lot like the G2 Cyberjets. The articulation's not as nice, but the transformation where the wings wind up? Huh, that's weird. Skyjack would show up in European markets, Australian markets, and then all over the goddamn place by the time of G2 and Machine Wars, because that's just the Cyberjet design. You know how I've been talking about Bug Bite, the torture, The lobotomizing, the fact that even other renegades find him so lowly and despicable that he's not worth working with. What if I told you that the only reason Bug-Bite got to be the man he was because of someone by the name of Gunner? Gunner is an ancient lord of Gobotron. He was able to colonize level 17, and he's the reason as to why none of the inhabitants have the ability to fight back. Yes, Bug-Bite was the one who took things to a sadistic new level, but it was only thanks to Gunner. So of course Gunner would throw his lot in with Psykill.
Take him to the dungeon until I decide his fate.
And also, his toy's weird. Like, Bug-Bite is big and imposing. Gunner is a kinda weedy looking jet. Granted, I like the jet, but in robot mode, does this scream horrible dictator to you? With Bug-Bite, it felt right. With this guy, he feels more like a henchman. I have to give props though, the European release made him green, and that actually does help the design. I feel like he's a little bit more intimidating now. This green Gunner was also the one that was released in Australia. Gobot ID number 72 is Bentwing. She is one of the newest of the Guardian flyers, and unfortunately we don't know anything about her because she hasn't shown up in any fiction. But she does have a toy. Speaking of that toy, she turns into a Corsair, the same alternate mode of G2 Ransack. And I love it here, these colors are way better. As for the robot mode, I mean it's goofy. I like the fact that she has a propeller beanie, that gives her a ton of character, but the proportions are a little bit wonky. An almost identical version of Bentwing was released in European markets and Australian markets. We are returning to the realm of the Super Gobots, and we're starting with Warpath. No ID numbers from here on out, and Warpath didn't even get to show up in a cartoon. Also, I really enjoy how he looks. Granted, he is very stretched out in robot mode, but the colors are great, and that helicopter mode is just awesome. I love this. That said, the European release gave him an olive green color scheme. That's so boring. I don't like that at all. And sadly, the Australians got this version as opposed to the way superior black and orange Warpath. We have Stax, and Stax is another one of the windshield faces. I like Stax a lot. His colors are amazing, like this is a great deco, and he kind of beat Optimus to the punch, because this is a semi-truck design that we would see with Optimus later on. I just think it's really funny that he has the windshield face. It fills my heart with joy. What can I say?
Just received an emergency signal from the planet Niwalak. Their sun seems to have destabilized.
Stax would be very prolific overseas. He would have 3 distinct European releases, as well as an Australian release, but finally, in 1985, there would be another Australian release called the Stax Transport Collector Pack. This would come with Stax, a trailer, and exclusive versions of Hans Kuff, Rescue, BuggyMan, and Turbo. So far, the Guardians haven't had the best luck with tanks. I'm sorry, I'm still looking over at Treads, he's a bit of a dork. But look at Defendor! Defendor is sick! He has a massive fusion cannon for an arm, he's pretty well articulated, he's powerful looking in robot mode, covered in camo, and then he is a mobile arms platform. He doesn't just have the firepower and the armor, but he's actually a little bit faster than most tanks. I like Defendor a lot. He definitely looks like a type of Transformer you could find at, say, Five Below. He's kind of knockoff-ish, but he's the cool kind of knockoff-ish. The Guardians have another massive W with Throttle. Do you remember how I've been talking about the fact that there's a few motorcycle Gobots that don't have to remove their wheels, and yet they're still really compromised, like Night Ranger or Mr. Moto? Look at Throttle! Throttle is fully articulated, has a great color scheme, is wonderfully proportioned, is very unique because of how skinny they are, and the wheels are able to fold up to the back, no parts forming required. Now it's worth noting that this toy can be fragile, specifically in the wheels. But this is a marvel of engineering. Like, this is the type of transformation that you would find in Prime RC later on. In fact, he kind of looks like Prime RC, and he looks a whole lot like the motorcycles that were coming out in G2. I like Throttle a ton. Again, I think Throttle is one of those high watermarks for how solid the engineering of the GoBots could be. In Europe, Throttle was released in silver, still looks okay, but I prefer the blue, and in Australia, you could get him in silver or blue. Okay, we were on a bit of a hot streak, let's go to another mixed bag with Razor. Razor is a guardian that fully engages in psychological warfare, trying to blind his renegade opponents before coming down for the kill. And I like his vehicle mode. The robot mode's kind of weird. In fact, now that I'm looking at it, he reminds me a lot of Armada's Starscream. Like, the intakes are in the same place, he has the skinny proportions, the wings sticking out on the sides. Even the cockpit of the vehicle mode is like Armada's Starscream. Razor was also released in European markets. Super Cooper is an older guardian that was nearly killed in a Renegade bombing. During the procedure to save his life, they were able to infuse him with extra energy, and now he's amongst the fastest of the guardians. Also, I like this toy a ton. He reminds me of the G2 laser rods, turning into one of these older 1950s hot rods. Granted, the robot mode is a bit more bulky than the laser rods, but that is a sick car mode. Super Cooper was released in Europe. Spy Eye is yet another guardian, and his main function is to, well, spy. He's apparently been able to spy on the Renegades with absolutely no issue across countless missions. That said, maybe the reason they don't notice him is because he's kind of boring looking. At least in Europe, he was given a little bit of green, but even still, this is one of the weaker Super GoBots. Clutch is a lot more interesting. He's a Renegade for one thing, and he's a powerful looking truck. But he reminds me a lot of Armada Red Alert. Like, look at how the kibble is, the chest, even his massive hips. Again, it's kind of cool to see how these ideas just echo in other series. Clutch had a European release that had a bit of a different deco, but not by much, and then that version was what was released in Australian markets. To round off the Super GoBots, there was Night Fright. Yet another Renegade, and he's pretty cool. That said, I think we've had better helicopters in the smaller range. At the very least, Night Fright has a great deco, and that helicopter mode is pretty goddamn sick. Night Fright was released in Europe, but unfortunately never had an Australian release. Now those were all the single release, normal GoBots that were released at mass retail in North America. But there is still a lot more to go. Like the Wendy's GoBots. There were single-packed GoBots that were released only at Wendy's as Happy Meals. And as a result, they can be counted as parts of the proper collection. Take Beamer, for instance. He's a pretty simple guy all around, but he is a fully transforming figure who looks decent enough, has enough color on him. He's a character. Breeze definitely has a little bit of Twin Spin in him, though admittedly Twin Spin did it a bit better. Guide Star looks a whole lot like Spacy, right down to a similar cone head and even a placement of the screw being the same. Oddball is, well, I don't really know what Oddball is, but he is kind of funny looking. I like him. Okay, Powwow is literally just Ice Pick, one of the minicons from Armada. That is insane. It's the same design and color and everything. I don't know how I feel about Skyfly, but then again, they came free with a burger. What are you gonna do, complain? Of course, it was more than just Wendy's GoBots that got a little bit strange. Tonka actually imported in a number of vehicles from Zemai-Kahin Winch Robo and named them the Secret Riders, led by Torque. And Torque, granted, he doesn't really look like a GoBot, but he is a massive truck. He feels more like a Tonka figure than any of the other GoBots do. There's also Tri-Track, which is yet another trike motorcycle, but I think he's doing this a whole lot better than Mr. Moto did. There's also Twister, who feels a whole lot like Whirl. Like, a whole lot like Whirl? Am I crazy? Of course, it didn't stop there. Tonka was literally getting their hands on any Japanese robots they could. They even went over to Walking Robo to get some walking GoBots, like Hitchhiker. Hitchhiker who looks like a Polaroid camera with legs. Don't forget about his arch enemy, Quickstep!
And let's not forget about the Rogue Guns, a series of role-playing toys that were supposed to be the answer to Shockwave and Megatron. You would have had pistol, shotgun, water rifle, squirt, hot chamber, and scope. Even though they are very goofy looking, they were functional toy guns.
I know it's easy to poke fun at some of these weirder spin-off figures, but let's not act like Transformers wasn't also taking whatever freaky robot they could get out of Japan. And I also think that sometimes GoBots could do Transformer gimmicks better than Transformers. Like, say, combiners. Looking at the original Gobot combiner, you'd have to get their Guardian spaceship as well as the power suits, and that would make up Courageous. Now, it's worth noting, these guys aren't really combiners. They're more like skeleton combiners. The Guardians just slot into this power armor. You can see that you can put almost anyone in the armor. Leader 1, Turbo, Smallfoot, Scooter, and they are able to help fill out the gaps of Courageous. But if you get them out, it would still just be Courageous. And Courageous looks really cool. He reminds me a lot of Starsaber for some reason. And granted, he doesn't have much articulation, but it is kind of nice to have a big, powerful looking robot that you don't have to sacrifice any of your smaller guys for. I know that for me, personally, as a kid, I always kind of hesitated to make the combiner because it meant that I would be going from 6 or 5 toys to 1 toy. I didn't like the idea that I would be losing potential bad guys or good guys on the battlefield. It's cool that Courageous didn't make you lose anybody. You could just pretend that there was someone in those gaps. That said, it's really cheeky that they just released the same toy but monochromatic and pretended it was a different character. This is the Renegade version. His name is Grungy. Okay, so maybe you could look at Courageous and Grungy and you would say, those aren't real combiners. Fair enough. But the greatest combiner robot of the 80s is still a GoBot. Puzzler. Let's start with Tic Tac. Tic Tac, as well as every other component of Puzzler, is not a sentient GoBot. There are drones controlled by Psykill, but even still, each and every one of them have unique designs. I really like Tic Tac. He actually has articulated elbows, which is pretty rare for any type of GoBot figure. And overall, he looks a little bit like a Cretan. I could kind of imagine him rubbing his hands together and just taking orders like an absolute little gremlin. Alongside Tic Tac would be Pocket. Pocket, who turns into the same exact Lamborghini as Sunstreaker and is yellow like Sunstreaker and has the same face and ears as Sunstreaker. That is really strange. Who ripped off who here? Or is this just like the weirdest type of convergent thinking? How did 2 different designers make a Lamborghini robot so similar to each other? Crossword actually looks a little bit like Turbo, but I still really like his Porsche car mode. Really slick. Jigsaw is a bit strange just because he's really lanky in the arms, but I do enjoy the overall contrast of the figure. Rube is turning into a Mercedes-Benz and almost reminds me of Prime Cliffjumper for some reason. I think it's just the hood of the car, but in the robot mode, he still has a ton of personality. Really, really cute guy. Rounding out the group is Zigzag, who looks like a kid wearing his dad's shoes. I don't know what's going on here. It looks like the entire car went to his legs. What happened? Did you notice the gimmick with the names? You got Tic Tac, Jigsaw, Pocket, Crossword, Rube, and Zigzag. They're all types of games. Specifically, they're types of puzzles. And when they combine, they are Puzzler. Puzzler is a powerful looking robot. He has articulation in the shoulders and is able to move his elbows outwards. He's able to move his legs. But the most impressive thing of all, he's all built in. No combiner kibble. No add-on pieces, no cheating, no skeleton. This is an all-in-one combiner. That's something that third party is only now trying to manage. And they did it in the 80s. Puzzler might be dated by today's standards, but as a feat of engineering, he puts any Takara Tomy combiner to shame. Even characters I like a lot, like Devastator or Bruticus, they don't hold a candle to Puzzler. But you wanna know what's even crazier? They didn't stop with Puzzler. They put out one more combiner, and they used the monster Renegades to do it. Starting with their leader, Frightface. Frightface is kinda generic looking, but I'm willing to look past it because I know what's coming later. I do appreciate, however, that his asymmetric sculpting is similar to Vamp. It makes it feel like Frightface is the new and improved model. Southclaw reminds me of Lord Zed from Power Rangers. Don't know why, but I love the colors, and the vehicle mode's pretty cool. He's just some demonic bat thing. I kinda like that Weirdwing is always shrugging. It feels like he's really confused to be here. Also, his head looks a lot like Team Fortress 2 Spy, and his vehicle mode is kind of a nothing, but come on man, it's the monster Gobots. They are all kind of nothing. Alright, I want you to look at this green guy, the one who looks like a Viacon from War for Cybertron. I know that his vehicle mode's a nothing. I know that it looks like he's shrugging. I know that it looks like he's wearing bell bottoms. His name is Heart Attack. I don't know why, but that's a really funny name for a children's toy. It's like, what's his name? Heart Attack. What's his brother's name? Stroke. What's his mom's name? Testicular cancer. There's also his brother, Gorejaw. Gorejaw is freaky looking. Like, look at his head and torso. This feels like an impressionist rendition of like a Transformer design. This doesn't feel like a toy. And yet here it is, in 3 dimensions. It is a toy you could buy on shelves. And his name is Gorejaw, and he looks like that. After all that, Fangs is just kind of there. But screw it. Let's get on to the main event. If you get Frightface, Heart Attack, Southclaw, Weirdwing, Gorejaw, and Fangs together, they can form Monstrous. Look at this thing. People are constantly talking about how cool Monstructor is. To me, this is what Monstructor should have looked like. Weirdly asymmetrical, and yet everything still makes sense. All the wild colors, weird arms and knives sticking out at all angles. This is amazing. I don't think Monstrous is quite as good as Puzzler, but it's worth pointing out, still completely all built in. No kibble, no add-ons. Everything you need is within the figures themselves. Regardless of which is your favorite between Monstrous or Puzzler, both of them achieved something that Transformers didn't even attempt until 30 years later. That is awesome. Okay, so Gobots might have done combiners as good or better than Transformers. That's a moot point, we could argue that all day. But what you can't deny is that Gobots did Duocons better. Gobots did the Dread Launchers, and gave us someone as insane as Chaos. Chaos is a jet fighter and a truck that carries the fighter around and is able to transform in an incredibly powerful looking robot. One of the best Gobots is actually a 2-in-1. Of course, Chaos isn't alone. There's also Revolt that's able to turn into a boat and a falcon. And even though the robot mode is kind of iffy and the colors are boring, this is so cool. Like, this kind of reminds me of Double Dealer, but better. To be fair, there's also Trader, and Trader's kind of iffy, but come on, the other two are really good, and Trader's still interesting at the very least. He's not terrible, he's just not as cool as his brothers, is all. Those are concepts that Gobots did better than Transformers. But what about the concepts that Gobots did that Transformers never touched? Like, say, vehicles. Look at the Rumble and the Blast. These guys are called boomers. I know, make your joke. But what they're able to turn into is a mobile command center for either the Guardians or the Renegades that transform into their own larger beings. These were made by Tonka for the line, and it gave your Guardians a way to get from point A to point B quickly. Now, these are cool, but what about full-on proper playsets? The crown jewel of any Guardian collection is the command center. Within the Gobots cartoon, the Guardians get around using their command center. It is a space shuttle that's able to deploy legs and look like an AT-AT, or it's able to stand up and be a full-featured base, complete with a cafeteria, a sick bay, a command center. It is awesome. This is one of my favorite Gobots things ever. I'm just a sucker for playsets, especially if the figures are small. And with Transformers, we don't really get playsets. Eventually we'd get the Dark of the Moon arc, but other than that, we just get cardboard dioramas. The command center was something that you could use to fully play out so many different scenarios. You'd be able to interrogate renegades, or to sneak in as renegades, or you could just have your guardians hanging out, or on patrol. So many play features, so much play potential, and it's something that you could never get from Transformers in the 80s, or today, really. But it wasn't just the Guardians. The Renegades also got their thruster. The thruster is how the Renegades were able to get around, and with the thruster, you'd have 3 different levels to play on, as well as different observation decks, and a throne for Psykill.
And of course, if we're going to talk about vehicles, we have to talk about the Zod, one of Psykill's ultimate weapons and MacGuffin of countless episodes. And not only was it a full functioning toy in its own right, but it was massive, and still pretty affordable these days. Of course, later on in the GoBots cartoon, the Zod was phased out in order to introduce the Scales, and it also got a toy, and I think looks even better than the Zod.
Of course, for all my praise of the challenges and the risks that GoBots took that Transformers didn't, it was ultimately that same spirit that killed the line. When Transformers had a movie in 1986, GoBots had to respond somehow, and they did with Battle of the Rock Lords. Battle of the Rock Lords is a theatrically released movie, and it's about as good as the G1 movie, which is to say not at all. The G1 movie has better animation, but I think both films have really poor stories, but are carried by good characters. I enjoy seeing the Guardians and the Renegades in a new setting. I even like the characters of the Rock Lords. But with a toy line that was struggling to convince kids that they were as good as Transformers, with the Transformers comic and cartoon outperforming GoBots at every turn, and with many kids seeing GoBots as cheap, tiny, and not all as impressive as the bloated Transformers figures, Rock Lords ultimately proved to be the death knell. Which is a shame, because they're better articulated and better transforming than GoBots or Transformers at the time. Take Boulder, for instance. Boulder is the young leader of the Rock Lords, trying to protect them from the evil Magmar and his soldiers. And even though it might be simple to write it off as just a rock, this is a rock with shoulders, elbows, hips, knees, articulation that would have been decent even by today's standards. You can actually pose your Rock Lords. Now, granted, you might scoff at the idea that they all turn into rocks, but is that honestly that much different than all of Soundwave's cassettes? Or how many of the Throttle bots exist? At least there's more transformation steps here, more articulation, more thought, more paint. The Rock Lords have some good stuff going for them, and Boulder is a great representative of that. There's also Granite, who is a completely flat rock that transforms into a bulbous, bulky bodybuilder. It's kinda cool to see something flat turn into someone with so many dimensions. Admittedly, Magmar's pretty rough, which sucks because he's supposed to be the main bad guy. If he were more red than brown, I think this would have come off a lot better, because I like his Trojan helmet-esque head, but as it stands, he kinda just looks like a clump of mud. Or like a thing of dog shit. Then again, look at Nugget. Nugget's kinda cute, in all honesty. He reminds me of Wally for some reason, and he's completely covered in a nice vac metallized gold. He's really shiny, really impressive looking. It does make it hard to find a good Nugget nowadays, but if you can, he looks amazing on a shelf. Sticks and Stones is incredibly fun, if just for the fact that it's a two-headed robot. And granted, when he transforms, you don't really know that it's the two heads, but he turns into what looks like an anvil, which is even funnier to me. And let's not forget, Sticks and Stones is voiced by Peter Cullen and Frank Welker. If you ever want to voice the character that's had both of the main Transformers voice actors inside their heads, you need to get Sticks and Stones. I'm not gonna defend Tombstone. Tombstone's kind of rough looking. Brimstone's really funny. I like his big mouth, and when he turns into a rock, his eyes are still there. Crackpot has a really funny name, but that's kind of all he's got. Still, he exists. Marble's weird. Like, Marble's not accurate to the movie. Really, he should be more white than gray. But also, he looks wrong. Why does it look like his brain's exposed? Even still, good articulation. More articulation than most G1 Transformers or GoBots. I don't like Pulverize. Pulverize looks like a sack of skin that stood up, and they turn into a chair. It feels like the serial killer that skinned their victims and then turned them into furniture. If one of those pieces of furniture just stood up, that's what Pulverize is. I don't know how I feel about Slimstone. The body looks weird, but then again they have a weird monster head, so I think I love them. Stoneheart is really, really cool. So even though they turn to a rock, the transformation is actually a lot of fun, and you have articulation in the neck, articulation in the shoulders, articulation in the elbows, articulation in the fingers, the hips, the knees, the toes. This was a super articulated transforming figure. We didn't get anything like this until Beast Wars, but Stoneheart was right there rocking poses. There was also a dog. You can get Spike Stone. It's a dog. Purple dog. I like dog. You like dog? Truth be told, there was just a bunch of what they called Rocksaurus. Essentially, it was just a bunch of rocks that turned to animals. For instance, there's Terra Rock here. Admittedly, I like the dog more, but your Rock Turkey is totally valid. Just like the Renegades and Guardians, the Rock Lords even had their own vehicles, like the Rock Pot. When you transform your Rock Lords, you'd be able to store them inside. Or you could have this thing launch them. There's also the Stone Wing, which is a really cool car that turns into a jet and it has a great paint wash on it. But unfortunately, it is a brown cylinder, so it also kind of looks like you're playing with a giant piece of shit. 1987 would be the final year of GoBots, and there would be no normal Guardians or Renegades left. It would only be Rock Lords, starting with Saberstone, and that's just a ball sack. That's just a ball sack with a face. Spearhead was cool. I really don't think they look like a GoBot, but at the very least they have good articulation and they're really characterful. He kind of looks like just a generic DC bad guy, or like he'd fight Ben 10 in the beginning of an episode. Nothing special, but kind of cool. There were also the Jewel Lords, which were made using translucent plastic in order to recreate stones like rubies, like Flamestone, who is actually kind of cool looking. They look a bit like a Bugman? A Bugman that's see-through? I don't know. Something about this is like making me think I need to get a Jewel Lord. There's also Sunstone, who really reminds me of animated Ratchet. I think it's just because of the brow, but I really see my old medic in him. That said, the single most popular and hardest to find Rock Lord is Solitaire. Solitaire is a Jewel Lord, made out of translucent plastic, and due to the transformation, she is incredibly fragile. But you want to know the victory lap that is this figure? Solitaire was the main woman protagonist introduced within the Rock Lords movie, and even if it took a few months, she did have a toy come out. Where the hell are you, RC? Then again, there was also Rock Roller. I don't like Rock Roller. I feel like Rock Roller has a camera hidden in my bathroom somewhere. There's also Rock Shot, which for some reason really reminds me of The Thing. I think it's just the colors, but he reminds me of old Ben Grimm. There's Stonehook, which is... I don't even know what he is. I don't know what anything is right now. I don't know what their deal is. I don't know what they're trying to do. I don't even know what they turn into. That's not a rock. That's like a clipboard. To be fair, they did try to experiment with the Rock Lords, making shock rocks, like Blast Rock, which is a gun that's a rock, I think. There was also Dragonstone, who really looks like those McDonald's Transformers. And Stunstone. What a figure to end off on. Well, we're not going to end there. There's still one GoBot left. I want to point this out. I know it really feels like I'm trying to take the piss with Rock Lords. I do think the Rock Lords were overall a very hit and miss type of assortment, but they stayed true to the spirit of GoBots. They experimented with new and different alternate modes. They gave us a great diversity of character. They gave us men and women, they gave us two-headed monsters and dogs and pterodactyls. Even when they decided that everyone was going to share a type of vehicle mode, a rock, they still gave us incredibly different robot modes. And with the original assortment of Renegades and Guardians, we were constantly getting new vehicle modes, new ideas, new innovations with transformation. But there was one character who was important in the cartoon that never came out in America, and is still considered to be one of the greatest GoBots of all time. Snoop. Snoop is the single greatest converter amongst the GoBots. She has trained tirelessly to be able to transform quickly and without making a sound. As a result, she is Psykill's greatest spy. She is able to get anywhere, gain any intel, and get back out before anybody notices. In keeping with her nature, she's able to transform into the SR-78 Blackbird, one of the fastest and most celebrated stealth jets ever created. For whatever reason, Snoop was never released in the US. Only released in Australia, Snoop has an amazing transformation. A fully featured robot mode that is so characterful, has so many colors and great layout of those colors, and an incredible conversion gives you one of the best looking Blackbirds we've ever had. This Snoop embodies everything great about the GoBots. This is a woman character, a woman bad guy, mind you, who isn't treated as dainty, who isn't turned into a love interest. She's not there to seduce and flirt the Guardians. She's not the Catwoman to Leader One's Batman. No, she is a spy. She is the best spy that Psykill has. They treat her the same as any of the male characters. She gets into fights and gets beaten the same as any of the male characters. She is able to perform and act as a GoBot without there being any type of weird fetishization of the character. There's never a cake shot of Snoop.
I don't need anything. I'm the latest model, equipped with all the latest accessories.
Snoop embodies everything great about the original lineup of GoBots. The same spirit that was even found in the final days of Rock Lords. The willingness to experiment. The willingness to be inclusive. The willingness to have diversity of design, diversity of idea. Whenever anyone tries to tell you that the GoBots were dumb, or that they were rip-offs of Transformers, you need to remember that they weren't rip-offs. And Transformers aren't rip-offs of GoBots either. They were a beautifully unique thing. Were they as popular as Transformers in the 80s? No, but they were popular. Don't get this twisted. The GoBots were still an incredibly successful toy line. GoBots might not have a 40-year history. There might not be a new GoBots cartoon coming out tomorrow. There might not be a film series that's grossed billions of dollars. But there is a pretty solid cartoon back in the 80s, and an amazing toy line. And both that cartoon and that toy line has gone on to inspire countless ideas within Transformers. From similar robot modes, to similar vehicle modes, to similar conversions, right down to the origin story of the two main characters. The story of Optimus and Megatron is a reflection of Leader One and Psykill, and GoBots came up with that. GoBots deserves a new shake. GoBots deserves a fair judgment. Were there bad GoBots? Yeah, there were. Were there some weirdos? Yeah, there were. But was there also some amazing figures? Figures that were decades ahead of their time? Figures like Puzzler and Scorp? Yeah, there was that too. The GoBots were constantly innovating and changing. And eventually, they took a bridge too far, and the mainstream audience wasn't into them anymore. Maybe Rock Lords was a bad idea, or maybe at that point, transforming robots as a whole were going down. It wasn't too long after that G1 started to go downhill too. Maybe it was just time for GoBots to go away for a bit. But now that GoBots have been gone for so long, when I look back on them, I see so many of the things I wish were in Transformers. The willingness to take a risk, the willingness to have such different designs and alternate modes, and the willingness to treat the women as characters and not just the girl. GoBots had magic to it. Transformers has magic to it as well. But I hate that we spend so long talking about the groundbreaking nature of Transformers, when GoBots deserves so much of that credit too. Well guys, I guess it's time for me to ask, which was your favorite GoBot, and is there a GoBot you're trying to track down right now? Eventually, I do want to talk about GoBot redos. I want to talk about GoBots within Transformers and third-party guys and the Action Toys GoBots, but for today, I just want to talk about this vintage toy line because I think it is so impressive and so unsung, and there are so many GoBot figures that people just straight up don't know about that are really interesting and great fiddle toys. All the GoBots still are. It is so fun to just constantly transform a GoBot back and forth. They're perfect little STEM toys. But I'll also say this was a longer video, but I'm glad to have done it. I've been wanting to make this GoBots video for a long while, and this feels like a great dry run for the Beast Wars video in October. That said, there were a lot more GoBots than I thought there were. I also was not expecting there to be so many unique variants of GoBots, so I might have bit off more than I could chew here, but hey, we're getting through it together. In any case, guys, if you'd like to support me or the show, I'm on Patreon. $1 would give you access to my Discord server, Moonbase1. $5 would get you access to videos early and let you download videos directly from me. And $10 will make you a producer. You'll show up in every video I make from now on and be able to make direct Patreon requests. Like this video. It is a direct Patreon request from a Transformers fan. The only reason why this video came out this month is because this is what Transformers fan wanted. In any case, guys, thank you all so much for watching, and hey, we'll see what we get up to next time.